There are 3 Back to the Future movies, and a lot of fans of the series think that the last film is the weakest in the trilogy and doesn't live up to the standards of the first 2 movies. Now, I understand where people's disappointment may come from. It's very different to the rest of the trilogy in terms of its visual look, themes, and pacing, but I believe its uniqueness is exactly what the series needed for its ending. Let's talk about what viewers don't realize about Back to the Future Part 3, and how it's actually an incredibly underrated film and the perfect ending to Marty's story. Real quick, I make content on all different types of movies. Subscribe so you don't miss out. In true Back to the Future fashion, Part 3 picks up right where Part 2 left off, with Marty seemingly stranded in 1955 after Doc and the DeLorean disappear with a strike of lightning. Marty is instantly delivered a letter from Doc, who traveled back to 1885 and spent 8 months living there. Marty discovers that Doc died just weeks after writing that letter, and like the hero Marty is, he travels back to the wild, wild west to save his dear friend. Back to the Future Part 3 feels so dissimilar to the rest of the series because of how its setting prompts it to play with genre. Marty and Doc are now in a time period 138 years before us. We've witnessed the lead characters in 3 other time periods thus far: 1955, 1985, and 2015. And though 1955 is quite far back at this point, it still encapsulates a look and feel that we're familiar with. The characters go to a school that likely looks like somewhere we've been. They face issues with interpersonal relationships that you've probably witnessed or experienced, like bullying or high school infatuation. Even the completely inaccurate prediction of 2015 features urban design, imaginative technology, and colloquial dialect in ways that we have some level of personal understanding of. The Wild West now? Well, that's something we only see through television and movies. Since the movie is set in the 1800s, it doesn't have cool restaurants or school functions to play around with visually. Where the first 2 films of the trilogy are fancy and over the top with their use of setting, the third film compensates with utilizing genre. Back to the Future dramatizes Western film genre conventions to help the audience feel completely outside of their realm of familiarity. We get fun showdown music, see classic cowboy shots, and hear slang we likely don't use in our own lives.
If you ain't here, I'll hunt you and shoot you down like a duck.
By dipping into another genre, the film is giving us a more genuine Back to the Future experience, an authentic feeling of time traveling. I get why viewers miss the excitable action scenes and quick pacing of the first 2 films, but I'd like to implore Back to the Future fans to think more carefully about what they'd want from the third film. Imagine in Back to the Future Part 3, Marty went back to 1955, 1985, or 2015 again. The story would be boring because we've already seen him in that environment and interact with those characters many times before. Even surrounding decades would tire the audience of the same visual look. I think people also undervalue the demonstration of vulnerability and emotionality in film, particularly in male characters.
The woman of my dreams, and I lost her for all time.
And this is exactly what makes Back to the Future Part 3 so great. We've gone big with action and humor in the series already. Here we slow down the pacing and focus more closely on character. Marty finally confronts the issues he's had the entire trilogy regarding his impulsiveness, ego, and how easily provoked he is.
What's wrong, McFly? Chicken? What's wrong, dude? You yellow?
He's given a helpful lesson by Seamus in not being impacted by people's words.
Martin used to let men provoke him into fight. He was concerned that people would think him a coward if he refused. That's how he got a Bowie knife shoved through his belly in a saloon in Virginia City. Never considered the future, poor Martin. God rest his soul.
Sure, and I hope you're considering the future, Mr. Eastwood.
Even more new to the trilogy is the attention placed on Doc, who until the third film was really just characterized by his goofiness and love for science. Doc had spent years alone and working on his inventions. Besides Marty and Einstein, he didn't have many social interactions, and he definitely didn't have a romantic life. It's lovely that we get to see the more sensitive side of Doc as he falls in love with Clara and starts to prioritize human relationships. And that brings us to the character of Clara Clayton, who's one of my favorites in the entire trilogy. She's an incredibly forward-thinking and curious individual, especially for her time.
And the local scientist, a blacksmith.
Science? What sort of science? Astronomy? Chemistry?
She breaks through the stereotypes and expectations of women in the 1800s with her interest in science and literature.
They break the pull of the Earth's gravity and send the projectile through outer space. Damn it! I read that book too. You're quoting Jules Verne from The Earth to the Moon.
You've read Jules Verne.
She's headstrong, independent, and demonstrates self-respect. The writing of her character really represents what themes the entire trilogy promotes: embracing your differences and overcoming adversity. Clara shows that the concept of internal strength transcends time, just as Marty and Doc travel throughout the centuries to realize. Stripping away some of the fanciness of the Back to the Future world gives the audience a better perspective of the characters we've grown to know and love, as well as its ultimate lesson. By the end of the movie, Marty and Doc have spent 3 films traveling forward and backward in time trying to change their future, and in their expedition across time and space, they've developed the mentality that the future is something to be feared and can only work out well if you have a time machine. I do think it's super sad that Marty and Doc no longer live in the same city or even in the same time period at the end of the trilogy, but I think it's brilliant that the movies left us on the optimistic and encouraging note that we do have control over our lives.
But what does that mean?
It means your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future is whatever you make it. So make it a good one. Both of you.